This is kind of a weird one. I didn't expect myself to actually make this dish, but we're going to try to make the green tea pureed soup from Food Wars. It wasn't really on my radar until Dragon's Treasure hit me up and said, hey, can we send you a bunch of tea? So they sent me this giant box to pick from, a bunch of black teas, really cool flavored teas, a bunch of green teas that we're gonna need for this recipe. So let's make this thing. If you guys wanna pick up a bunch of really cool teas, check out my links below where you can get yourself a nice little discount from Dragon's Treasure. Now I tried to pair up each tea with their respective ingredient to try to bring out the best flavor in both the ingredient and the tea. The first is going to be the asparagus, which we pair with the Froppy tea, which is a green tea and kaffir lime tea. Next is going to be the Iro tea, which is a jasmine and green tea blend, which is really nice, and that's going to go with our chickpeas. The Dragonwell Z green tea is going to pair up with our artichokes. The Genmaicha tea is going to pair up with our brown beach mushroom because that tea does have toasted brown rice in it. And finally, to tie everything together, I am using a white tea in the form of Aries Final Gift to go with our white button mushrooms to be the plate sauce. They also sent me this really awesome tea infuser that allows you to trap all the tea leaves when you brew it, and it is my new favorite way to brew tea. Now I am starting with Aries Final Gift, which is the white tea, but all I need to do is really follow the instructions on the back of each package to brew each tea. For instance, the Aries Final Gift needed around 200 degrees Fahrenheit for water and 2 tablespoons worth of tea. After letting it brew, all you need to do is take this beautiful contraption, place it on your cup or mug of choice, and watch it just gently disperse your tea down below. It doesn't get any easier than this when you're trying to brew tea, seriously. Once this is done, your tea is ready to go to drink, to enjoy, or in this case, we're going to use it to cook some vegetables eventually. Now, the smart thing to do would have been to just get tea bags and fill up each tea individually and brew them all individually, but I really wanted to use this contraption over and over again, so I followed the instructions on each of those teas to make sure that I extracted the full potential out of each tea for these vegetables. Constantly washing, constantly filling, constantly boiling water until we had all of our teas ready to go, locked and loaded to start cooking all of these vegetables. Now that we have all of our teas ready, we have our brown beach, our chickpeas, our artichokes, our asparagus, and our white button mushrooms ready to start cooking. I'm starting with the asparagus first, and since I want this to be as smooth as possible, I did end up peeling my asparagus, but feel free to skip this step if you want it to be more fibrous. It does have a good amount of flavor in it, and I really don't like peeling my asparagus for any other reason other than to have a nice smooth puree. Now I'm treating the button mushrooms similar to how I treated the asparagus, in which we are going to gently peel back some of the dirt and some of the grime off of these mushrooms. Normally you don't really need to clean mushrooms this much, but since I want this sauce to be as white as possible, I am trimming off some of the dirt and grime from the top of the mushrooms. We also have to get the inside of the mushroom removed so that way it doesn't impart any of its color into the sauce. This is what we're going to eventually move later on once we're done processing the rest of the mushrooms. To do this, all you really need to do is cut your mushroom in half and gently scrape out any of the innards. You can also do this with a spoon, which is what I defaulted to, and I typically only do this with portobello mushrooms if I don't want any of that fibrous content. And really, for button mushrooms, this is just a personal choice to try to make this sauce as creamy as possible without any dairy. You can also save all of those innards for stock. Now that our mushrooms are done, we can move on to actually cooking some things. Drop all of your mushrooms into a small pot along with half of your Aries Final Gift and bring this over to the stove. Realize that you need all of the liquid from the Aries Final Gift and dump that back in. Now I am essentially steeping each vegetable. So all I'm really doing is making sure that I do steep each vegetable to where it's completely cooked and softened to where I can turn it into a puree later. I liked cooking 2 of these at a time and making sure I had a water bath going, so this way I can make sure that these are all still really warm when I go to plate this up. These only need to cook for around 10 minutes each before they're done and ready to be pureed. Remove all of your mushrooms from the pot and make sure you bring in just a touch of liquid. Don't bring all of the liquid over and begin pureeing this. This is going to be the bottom portion of our soup or our sauce, so this can be a little more loose than the other vegetables will eventually be. I tried to blend this until I got some bubbles out of it because they called it a cappuccino sauce, which makes me think that it did have some foam texture to it, but really you're not going to get that much foam out of it. Now same thing with the asparagus, just break those guys in half, making sure you can fit them in your pot, and top it off with your Froppy tea. Now the asparagus won't take as long, so make sure you pay attention to that. By now your chickpeas should be ready to go. Make sure you save all of that tea that you have been steeping with, and before we start blending the chickpeas, make sure you do start your artichokes so everything is kind of working at the same time. Now when we start to pure the chickpeas, your mileage may vary with how much liquid you need, and I wanted the consistency of the chickpea to be similar to a consistency of hummus. This is going to kind of bring us to that smooth texture we're looking for to later on form this soup. Make sure you do season this with a touch of salt, making sure you don't add any other spices to it because we want to extract all of that green tea flavor. By now, your artichokes should be ready to go, and this doesn't need too much liquid because of how much liquid they actually hold after cooking. I had to use my smaller food processor for this because my immersion blender wouldn't actually blend these artichokes because it was so few of them. Blend this until you have a nice smooth puree of artichokes, and it kind of looks like baby food, which isn't the most appetizing thing, I'm gonna be completely honest here. And place this into your container of choice, placing it back into that water bath that you have hanging out. And by now, we can actually start blending up our asparagus. Remember, do not bring all of that liquid over, and remember to put the blade into your food processor because now you're just making more of a mess than you really need to with this already ridiculous soup. Place all of your asparagus back into the processor, making sure you don't bring too much of that liquid, and puree this until it is nice and smooth, or as smooth as possible. Now, alternatively, you could try to strain these, but I don't feel like it would make much of a difference into making this not look like really vibrant baby food. Remove this into your container of choice and place that into your water bath. The final tea is going to be the brown beech with the Genmaika tea. Add in all of your liquid to your mushrooms and bring this over to the stove, just cooking them until those mushrooms are softened, or about 5 to 6 minutes, and remember to put the blade in the food processor. Life is not hardball, figure it out. Make sure you add in enough liquid to get this into a nice mushroom puree, which should take about 3 to 4 minutes depending on the food processor you're using. Remove all of this from your food processor and your mushroom puree is ready to go, which honestly looks the best out of the bunch so far. Now we get to finally plate up this thing. Grab some of your quote-unquote cappuccino sauce with the white mushroom and the Aries final gift, placing this at the bottom of your plate or your bowl, making sure that it doesn't touch the edges. Now we can actually make the quenelles, or however it's pronounced. Basically, you are turning your puree into a 3-sided football. To use this, you are going to use 2 spoons to gently press the purees into itself until you form this 3-sided football. Gently place this onto your soup, making sure one of the seams is facing directly up. Realize that this is just going to be too dark and too gray, so grab yourself a white plate and replate some of that soup onto the white plate so this way it has some contrast. You don't want this to look super dark because everything here is fairly dark. Now form another quenelle with your chickpea puree, placing that onto one quadrant, followed by the brown beech mushroom puree, making sure you try to get those 3 sides as best as possible, placing that into the second quadrant, followed by the asparagus, which does give it this beautiful green vibrant color, into the third quadrant, and then finally in the fourth quadrant is going to be our pureed artichokes made with the Dragon Well Z into the fourth quadrant. After cleaning this up, after seeing some of the leaching happening from the soup, we finally have Tsukasa Eishi's green tea soup puree with cappuccino mushroom sauce from Food Wars. Why? And there it is, guys, Tsukasa's green tea dish, his soup purees. Now, this is something I don't think I've ever really tried before, especially when you consider it trying to be a soup. It's not really a soup. Would you consider this soup? Is cereal soup? I'm not gonna go down that, just ignore that comment. Basically what I'm doing is I'm taking half of each puree with some of that sauce at the bottom, and that's gonna be the bite. This one is the mushroom, the first brown beech mushroom. Mostly tastes mushroom. Green tea gets a little lost in that one because the mushroom is so earthy. Here is the chickpea one. Let's see if we can taste anything other than chickpeas in this. More or less, you know, I feel like this is gonna be a trend. And then the artichoke finally. The acidity in the artichoke really does come through from what it was brined in. That's kind of nice, but again, like, you don't taste the green tea. And then finally, the asparagus. The asparagus actually, it came out really nice as far as the vibrancy and the color does. Tastes like pureed asparagus. Not gonna lie, I don't like this. I think if I were to throw in some herbs, maybe some garlic, shallot, anything like that, just to really complement the flavors of the vegetables, it really would have shown a lot more characteristics in it. The green tea is almost a waste in this. I don't think I can discern any of the green tea flavors because they are so subtle, so it's almost a waste of green tea. Speaking of, I didn't throw any of it away. Oh, that's foul. Oh, that's not good. Maybe as a broth? I think Tsukasa should have lost in that battle against Kuga because that pork looked amazing. My name is Chefpk. Get subscribed. Remember, keep playing with your food. We're gonna leave that there. I'm going this way.